Okay. Test, test. Test, test, test. Yeah. Test, test. Testing, testing. Levels, levels. Great. All right.
What do you think you're doing? Running the show by yourself?
Ooh.
Ooh, little hot, little hot. Heyo. Test, test. Oh yeah. Check it right here. Look at this.
Okay.
Okay, sure. What do you want us to sing or just speak?
All right. Kol Nidre Ve'asare Ve'koname Ve'charame Yomar Tov, welcome. I'm Rabbi Lauren Henderson, and welcome to Or Hadash. When we started planning for these Yamim Noraim at Or Hadash, one of the first questions that was asked was, how can we share Aaron Stambler and Jeff Cooper's beautiful rendition of Kol Nidre on cello and piano? How can we make this happen? And so luckily, we were able to access the recording of last year's Kol Nidre, and we also had Aaron and Jeff's blessing to use it. And I want to thank both of you so much for sharing this Or Hadash tradition again with us this year. We begin Yom Kippur with a ritual of release. Kol Nidre is a moment of release for all of our unfulfilled promises and unmet expectations from the year that has passed, and also for softening into the year that lies ahead. It too will no doubt be filled with its own challenges as well, and we pray that we can rise to meet them. I want to now invite up my dear friend, Aliyah Schwartz, who will be joining me up here on the bima to sing along over the course of Yom Kippur. Aliyah and I met 4 years ago in Chicago, and we have been singing together every high holidays since, and I'm really grateful that she's here with us. I also now want to invite up my husband, Joel Dworkin, and my mom, Dr. Nancy Henderson, who will be holding our Torah scrolls this evening during Kol Nidre. We turn now to the bottom of page 397 for Or Zarua as we take the Sifrei Torah out of the Ark. I invite you to rise.
Or Zarua Ule Yishrei Lev Simcha Or Zarua La Tzadik Ule Yishrei Lev Simcha Or Zaruach La Tzadik Ule Yishrei Lev Simcha Or Zaruach La Tzadik Ule Yishrei Lev Simcha.
Page 398. B'shiva Shemala U'b'shiva Shel Matar Al Dat HaMakom V'al Dat HaKahal Anu Matirin Leitpalel Im Avaryanim Kol Nidre Ve'asarei Vacharamei Vakonamei Vechinuyei Vekinusei Ushevu Din Dar Udeishtabana Udei Acharimna Vidyasarna al nafshatana miyom kippurim zeh ad yom kippurim haba aleinu litova kulon icharatna v'hon kolon yehon sharat Sheviki, Sheviti, Bitelinum Butalin, La Shririn, Villa Kayamin. Nidrana la nidre Vyasarana la esare Ushvuatana la Shavuot. Kol Nidre Vyasare Vacharame Vikoname Vichinuye Vikinuse Ushavuot Din Darna Udeishtabana Udei Acharimna Vidyasarna anashatana miyom kippurim zeh ad yom kippurim haba aleinu litova kulon icharatna v'hon kulon yehon sharat Sheviki, Sheviti, Bitelinum Butalin, La Esarana lo esare. Ushvuatana lashevuot. Kol nidre ve'esarei v'charamei ve'konamei ve'chinuyei ve'chinusei Ushevuot. Din darna Udehish tabana Udei acharimna Vidyasarna anashatana Miyom Kippurim zeh ad Yom Kippurim haba aleinu litova. Kulon yicharatna ve'od. Kulon yehon sharat. Shevikim, Sheviti, Vitelin Vutalin, La Shririn, Villa Kayamin, Nidrana. La nidre Viesarana La esare Ushmuatana Lashevuot. V'nislach l'chol adat b'nei Yisrael v'lagir agar b'tocham ki l'chol ha'am mishkagar slach la le'avon hazeh kekodel chastecha וכאשר נסעת לעמזה ממצרים ידהנה ושם נאמר ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. I'd like to invite our president, Gail Dunner, to share a few words now about our community and how we make our community whole.
Chatima Tova. As president of Or Hadash, I'm honored to speak this Kol Nidre on behalf of the board and our entire community. Some people have suggested to me that this year could be a difficult one for the Kol Nidre appeal, with all the chaos and uncertainty this year has brought. But I actually believe the last 6 months make the case for supporting our community so much more straightforward. With so many aspects of our lives put on pause, we're forced to really focus on what's most important: our personal well-being, our family's well-being, and our community's well-being. I know there are lots of demands on your dollars. The needs around us seem overwhelming. Helping to make sure our community members have enough food, speaking out for social justice, and supporting organizations that share your vision of a better future. Those are all important and worthy causes. But I also ask that you consider what's close to home, to make room to support and prioritize your Jewish family, your Or Hadash family, our Or Hadash community. Kol Nidre fundraising
Pardon us one moment. I'm just resetting here. We'll be right back. You start. stand by. We're just having a few technical difficulties. We thought we could get off really smooth, but it's not in the cards. Ya da da, ya da da, ya da da. Ya da da, ya da da, ya da da. Ya da da, ya da da. Ya da da, ya ya ya. Ya da da, ya da da. Ya da da. Ya da da, ya da da. Ya da da. Ya da da, ya da da. Ya da da. Ya da da, ya da da. Ya da da, ya da. Ya da da. Ya da da, ya da da. Ya da da. Ya da da, ya da da, ya da da. Ya da da, 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 ya da da. Thank you, everybody. We are going to continue with Baruch Hu, and then we'll come back to Gail's talk toward the end of the service. We'll turn now to page 408. Just take a breath. Invite you to rise in body, in spirit. Maybe sit up a little straighter. Allow breath to come into your body. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed. You can be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidbaro mariva ravim bochma potech sharim ufmishna umavir yom umevi laila umavdil ben yom ben laila Adonai Tzevaot Shemo El Chai V'Kayam Tamidim Lochaleinu Leolam Vaed. Ay, 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 ay. Baruch atah Adonai, Hamariv, Aravim. Page 410. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael hachavta, ve'avatcha, al tasir mimenu leolamim. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev amo Yisrael. Yom Kippur is the one day a year when we recite Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed after Shema together out loud, almost as a cry of defiance, a cry of we are here, we will not be silent. I invite you to close your eyes. Chant Shema with me. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kivod, Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam B'shivtecha b'beitecha u'b'leftecha b'derech u'v'shochvecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu l'totafot bein einecha u'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'v'yisharecha. Continuing on page 414. V'hayayim shemo hatishmo mitzvotai. Page 416. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Yisrael, varmarta alehem basulam tzitzit, al kanfei bigdehem ledorotam, v'natnu al tzitzit hakanaf v'til tachelet, v'haya lachem letzitzit, uritam oto, uzchartam et kol mitzvot Adonai, v'asitam otam, V'lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei nechem, asher atem zonim achareihem, l'mahan tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'yitem kedoshim l'lechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher tzeitichem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem l'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet, v'emunah kol zot v'kayim alim. Mi chamocha, who is like you, God? And it's just a question. It's just inviting us to search. Who is like you? Where do we see acts of holiness in the world? Who's carrying them out? Who are God's arms and legs and hands in the world? It is all of us. So I invite you to join us in Mi Chamocha. It's a call and response. And invite this question in. How do we become these manifestations of the divine in the world?
Mi chamocha, Ba'elim Adonai, Mi chamocha, Nedar bakodesh, Nora tehilo, Oh, sefele, Nora tehilo, Oh, sefele, ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay,
V'nehemar ki fadar Adonai Yaakov ugalo mi'ad chazak mimenu. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Baruch atah Adonai, God Yisrael. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom. Help us lie down in peace. This is a prayer of protection, a prayer of peace, and also a prayer of healing. And so as we sing, I invite you to share aloud or share in the chat any names of people that you're praying for tonight. Ufros aleinu sukkot, sukkot, Shalom ufros aleinu sukkot, sukkot, Shalom ufros aleinu sukkot, sukkot, Shalom ufros aleinu Sukkot Shalomecha, Baruch atah Adonai, Haporei Sukkot Shalom Aleinu, V'al Kol Amo Yisrael, V'al poem by Yehuda Amichai is called "The Place Where We Are Right." From the place where we are right, flowers will never grow in the spring. The place where we are right is hard and trampled, like a yard. But doubts and loves dig up the world like a mole, a plow. And a whisper will be heard in the place where the ruined house once stood. So we began the first of 5 silent prayers of Yom Kippur with a little bit of loosening of the soil. We begin to let go of the places where we know, we are convinced that we are right. And instead, we begin to step into questions. We step into unknown. And so in a moment, we'll enter into silence and space for the Amidah, which is found on pages 424 through 440 of your Machzor. And you're invited to follow along with the words of prayer in your Machzor, which will transition into the confessions starting on 434. Or you're welcome to reflect a little bit on these questions. Is there a place in my life or in my relationships in which I have insisted that I am right? And is my insistence on being right working for me? And how might we make space for doubt and for love? So we're on the bottom now of page 420. Yanaina, yanaina, yanaina. Yanaina, yanaina, yanaina. Yanaina, 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 yanaina. Yanaina, yanaina, yanaina. Ki vayom hazeh Yechaper aleichem litaher echem mikol chatotechem lifnei Adonai titharu. 422. Yitgadal veyitkadash shemei rabbah. Be'alma divrach irutei, ve'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'yamechon, u'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'bizman karib, Ve'imeru amen. Yesh merabah mevarach leolam ulamei almaya. Yitbarach ve'yishtabach ve'yitpar ve'yitromah. Yitnaseh ve'yitadar ve'yitaleh. Yitalal shemei dekudesha berihu. Leila, leila. Mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'ama v'imru amen. Silent Amidah begins on page 424.
Chatima Tova. As president of Or Hadash, I'm honored to speak this Kol Nidre on behalf of the board and our entire community. Some people have suggested to me that this year could be a difficult one for the Kol Nidre appeal, with all the chaos and uncertainty this year has brought. But I actually believe the last 6 months make the case for supporting our community so much more straightforward. With so many aspects of our lives put on pause, we're forced to really focus on what's most important: our personal well-being, our family's well-being, and our community's well-being. I know there are lots of demands on your dollars. The needs around us seem overwhelming. Helping to make sure our community members have enough food, speaking out for social justice, and supporting organizations that share your vision of a better future. Those are all important and worthy causes. But I also ask that you consider what's close to home, to make room to support and prioritize your Jewish family, your Or Hadash family, our Or Hadash community. Kol Nidre fundraising is not just something that's necessary for us to meet our budget goals and sustain our financial strength, although yes, it does that. Our Kol Nidre appeal is critical to making us financially whole, but more critically, it helps make the individuals in our community whole. It's really all about ensuring that we're here to lift all of us up. It is how we support our families who've lost their jobs due to the pandemic. We can say to them, it's okay, we've got your back. It is how we support the families who are struggling and have said to us, I don't know if our kids can attend Machon Hadash this year, we can't afford it. And we can say to them, don't worry, we'll make sure your kids can be part of this amazing educational program and can learn together with their friends. It's how we support our families who've suffered a loss, to have our Chesed committee reach out with food and kindness and comfort. And we can say to them, we know you are hurting and we're here for you. It's how we support young people in our community who don't belong to a synagogue or never considered it, as they're finishing college, starting their first jobs, just getting married. We can give them somewhere to connect as they explore and build their Jewish identities. We can say to them, come join us. We have you covered, literally. Your membership commitment is complimentary. And it's how we support expanding our tent, even beyond Atlanta, for high holidays and into the foreseeable future. By eliminating tickets and opening our proverbial doors, we can say to you, thank you for joining us from all across the country and all over the world to become a part of our big tent. On Friday night, before Rabbi Lauren gives the priestly blessing, she asked for those who can to give blessings, and for those who need it to receive blessings, and for those who are able to do both, to give and receive. I believe that all of us are in a position to help lift up our community, to make our community whole, not only with your participation and your volunteerism, but also with your dollars. We are blessed to have a community full of generosity. As we explore this year's theme of Ayeka, where are you? I thank you in advance for answering, here I am. Many of you have already made your Kol Nidre pledges, and for that we are very grateful. And for those of you who haven't had a chance to do so yet, please make your contributions online or send a confidential email to the shul. Details are in the letter you received. My hope is that this year, each one of you pledges your support so we can not only reach our financial goal, but so that we reach 100% participation. And for those of you who are not members, not affiliated, but have joined us this year, we hope that you find our services meaningful and uplifting. We welcome your donations and invite you to continue to be a part of our Or Hadash community. May you and yours be inscribed and sealed in the book of life, and may this year be one of good health, gratitude, and connection as we strengthen our Kahila Kadosha, our sacred community, together.
Thank you, Gail. What is this 25-hour journey that we are embarking on together now that the gates are open? In many ways, Yom Kippur is like a 25-hour meditation retreat, which may have some of you very excited and others of you a little bit terrified. It's not just about what happens during services, but it's actually an opportunity to pay close attention to our lives, even in the in-between times. You know, if you've been on a meditation retreat before, there's something called continuous practice, that we're just watching every moment. Who am I now? Who am I now? What's going on now? Who do we become the moment that we think nobody is looking? So there will be moments of silent prayer and opportunity to reflect with the words in the machzor or just by focusing inward. And there will also be a lot of repetition as the confessions and the prayers just slowly start to wear a groove into our souls the more we say them, peeling back layers, revealing more about ourselves little by little as the day goes on. In other ways, Yom Kippur is like a marathon. It is an opportunity to practice endurance and persistence, and also to know that there will be moments of joy and transcendence and moments you will be asking yourselves, why did I show up for this and sign up for this in the first place? And you know, if you've run a marathon before, if you've done anything that required endurance, pacing yourself is really key. We've got a long way to go. So be patient with yourself if you're not there yet, whatever there means or looks like for you. At this moment, though, we are all here together in time, together standing at the starting line, maybe feeling a sense of excitement, maybe some dread, maybe some calm or some stress, or maybe you don't know quite where you are. Earlier this morning, I gathered with a few Or Hadash members at Arlington Cemetery to visit the gravesides of our members that are buried there. And before tonight's service began, we lit a yard site candle to honor the memory of all of our loved ones who have passed away. And I learned a few years ago from Rabbi Aviva Richman that these candles that we light at the beginning of Yom Kippur didn't always come from the grocery store. Centuries ago, in Jewish communities of Eastern Europe, women would take string to the cemetery and measure the circumference of their relatives' graves. Then they would cut the string into wicks and dip the wicks into wax over and over again as they recited prayers to make large candles. And these candles were the ones that were brought to the synagogue for Yom Kippur, providing much needed light from Kol Nidre all the way through Ne'ilah. Bella Chagall, who is married to the artist Marc Chagall, describes the process of making two candles. First, there was the candle of the living, when her mother offered prayers on behalf of living relatives. she would pull out the first thread and say, "For my beloved husband, for Shmuel Noah, may he be healthy and live to his 120th year." Names are slowly intoned, threads are drawn, now yellow with wax and tears. And she said, "I can hardly hold all the ends that remain free of wax. One heavy candle is now ready." And then there was the candle of the dead. This was not merely about memory, but it too involved active prayers. She would say, "May all of us live long. For my deceased mother, Aiga, may she pray well for us. My mother, do not forsake your only daughter, Alta." Mother prays over the thread she has drawn out. Apparently, she would like to linger over her mother, with her mother, as long as possible. And so while making the candle of the dead, Chagall's mother brings these relatives to life and asks them to actively pray on behalf of the living. Neither of these candles were simply memorial candles. The image of all these candles burning in the synagogue on Yom Kippur alongside the worshipers represents literally every person, living and dead, standing together in prayer for each other. It is not a day of isolated or isolating introspection, but of interpersonal prayer, of community and compassion without boundaries, surpassing even the most stark boundary of all, the one between life and death. The piyut that we're about to sing on page 446, Ya'aleh, maps out the journey ahead of us, from evening to morning to evening again. It says, "May our prayers rise up from the evening, may our cry come from the morning, and may our song appear till evening." So above all, this Yom Kippur is a journey of ascent, to go higher and higher, le'ela u'le'ela, until we reach the heavens, until we defy the stark divide between life and death. These gates of heaven are now wide open. And so our question for these next 25 hours is, will we choose to walk inside? We turn to page 446. Ya'aleh tachanunenu mi'erev v'yavo shavatenu miboker v'yira'eh rinunenu ad harev Ya'aleh kolenu mi'erev Ya'aleh, Ya'aleh, Ya'aleh Ya'aleh kolenu Ya'aleh, Ya'aleh, Ya'aleh Ya'aleh kolenu Ya'aleh tachanunenu mi'erev v'yavo shavatenu miboker v'yira'eh rinunenu adarev yale kolenu miharev yale 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 kolenu yale 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 kolenu yada dandai dai andai dai 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 andai dai andai dai 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 andai andai dai andai dai 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 andai dai andai dai Over the course of this evening and tomorrow, you'll hear reflections and interpretations on these prayers from a number of different congregants at Or Hadash. And so I now want to invite Christy and Eduardo Milrud to introduce the recitation of the 13 attributes of forgiveness.
Hi, Or Hadash friends. This is Eduardo and Christy Milrud. And in preparation to the high holidays, we read about the 13 attributes and we want to share some thoughts with you. So when we read the 13 attributes, we asked ourselves what this really was about, and we think it's about how we can become more forgiving. So how do we really become more forgiving? And the first idea that we thought about is, well, pretty much forgive and forget. And we read about this concept, which turns out to be not the best. It's really the Hi, Or Hadash friends. This is Eduardo and Christy, and in preparation for the high holidays, we read about the 13 attributes, and we would like to share some thoughts with you. So when we read about the 13 attributes, the real question was, well, this is about how we can become more forgiving. And the first thought was, well, we forgive and forget. So we read about that concept, and it's actually a very misguided and untrue sentiment. It's all about remembering differently without the emotional charge. And there's some methods out there that actually go through the process of forgiving. And one that we really liked was a method called the REACH method. And we liked it because it connects with some of the elements of the 13 attributes. REACH stands for recall, which is about looking at the event in an objective way without the negative feelings. Then you empathize to the offender without the negative feelings. Then A is for altruistic gift, which really is about looking at forgiveness as a gift, something that you give, and we really like that. And then you commit to the forgiveness and you hold onto that forgiveness through patience and compassion. So with this process, you also have to start with the little things in a daily life, in a daily basis. So for example, if someone cuts you off in the freeway, you just have to let it go and be more forgiving. So yeah, if we think about forgiveness as a way to, as a gift, and we practice it daily, I think it leads you to a better life. And we really like that. So we also have a poem to share around this thought, which is called Give Lavishly and Live Abundantly by Helen Steiner Rice.
You want me to read it too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go you go first.
It starts off, the more you give,
The more you get.
The more you laugh.
The less you fret.
The more you do unselfishly.
The more you live abundantly.
The more of everything you share.
The more you always have to spare.
The more you love.
The more you'll find that life is good and friends are kind.
For only what we give away
enriches us from day to day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo and Christy. Thanks for bringing your love and your wisdom to all of us. We turn now to page 454 for the recitation of the 13 attributes of forgiveness. El Rita Lanu Lamash Loshesre Zachor Lanu Ayom Rich Loshesre Kimoshe Hodatalana Mikadam Kimoshe Katuv Vayired Adonai Banan Miet Yetzebi Mosham Vayikra B'Shem Adonai V'yavur Adonai al panav Vayikra Adonai Adonai El Rachum V'Chanun Erech Apayim V'rach chesed v'emet Notzer chesed la'alafim Nosei avon v'fesha v'chata v'nakeh Adonai Adonai El Rachum V'Chanun Erech Apayim V'rach chesed v'emet Notzer chesed la'alafim Nosei avon v'fesha v'chata v'nakeh V'salachta levonenu l'chatatenu u'nechaltanu Slach lanu aminu ki chatanu v'chalanu makenu ki fashanu Ki ata Adonai tov v'salach v'rav chesed l'chol korecha. We turn to page 458. Shema Kolenu means hear our voice, one singular voice, believing that through the power of this day, all of our voices are joined together as one. But we don't speak with a singular voice. We each have our own stories to tell. Before Rosh Hashanah, we put out a call for congregant connections, asking you to submit personal stories about times when you felt lost and found your way again, speaking to our theme of Ayeka. And a number of you shared stories, and so each time we sing Shema Kolenu, I'm going to read an excerpt from just one of them. So here's one. Years ago, our child was diagnosed with a chronic disease. It was a totally unexpected diagnosis and simply took the wind out of my sails. I cried for days, not knowing how our child and our family would navigate the days and years ahead to keep her safe and comfortable. For years, I tended to be more of a listener to my friends, to be there for them, and hardly ever sharing when I needed their help. But this time was different. I shared the situation of my child's diagnosis with a couple of friends, which led to a couple of more, and in no time, friends, acquaintances, strangers began emailing and calling me with helpful advice, support, and most of all, with love. From my loving community of supporters, I found a strength I didn't realize I had within me to confront the challenges that lay ahead for my child and our family. So here I am, stronger, for giving myself permission to speak my pain and being open to accepting the gifts of others. We're on the top of page 458. Shema Koleinu.
Shema Koleinu.
Adonai Eloheinu.
Adonai Eloheinu.
Husverachem Aleinu.
Husverachem Aleinu.
V'kabel barachamim uratzon et tefilatenu. Hashivenu Adonai.
Hashivenu Adonai.
Eilecha v'nashuva.
Elecha v'nashuva.
Kadesh Yameinu kekedem.
Kadesh Yameinu kekedem.
Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha v'nashuva v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yameinu kekedem. Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha v'nashuva v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yameinu kekedem. The ritual of confession has its roots in the Torah. In Numbers chapter 5, it says, a man or woman who does a sin toward a person, thus breaking faith with Adonai, and that person realizes their guilt, they shall confess the wrong they have done. So confession is possible at any time, but on Yom Kippur, we make it a priority. And on Yom Kippur, it is intimately connected to the deathbed ritual of confession. But in this year, when we are already so aware of our own mortality and the mortality of each and every person around us, what is this ritual teaching us? So perhaps, as Rabbi Avi Killup shares, it is not about staring death in the face, but about growing from the experience of facing death. It is about practicing how we want to live once we've stared into that abyss, and reminding us that right now, at this very moment, we are still miraculously alive. So I invite you to join with me on page 460 in this beautiful song of being protected and being in deep, deep, alive relationship with the Holy One, as it imagines different metaphors for that connection. And then we transition into a Shamnu and the Vidui. Page 460. Eloheinu, Eleavoteinu, V'Imotenu, Slach lanu, Mechalanu, Kaper lanu, Ki anu amecha, Ve'ata Eloheinu, Anu vanecha, Ve'ata binu, Anu avdecha, Ve'ata Adonenu, Anu Ya'alecha,
Ve'ata chelkeinu anu nachalecha, ve'ata goraleinu anu tzonecha, ve'ata roeinu anu charmecha, ve'ata notreinu anu gevulatecha, ve'ata yotreinu anu rayatecha, ve'ata dodeinu anu segulatecha, ve'ata kiroveinu anu amecha, ve'ata malkeinu anu ma'amirecha, ve'ata ma'amireinu. Anu azefanim, ve'ata rachum v'chanun, anu ksheoref, ve'ata herech apayim, anu malei avon, ve'ata malei rachamim, anu yameinu kitzel over, ve'ata hu shnotecha lo yitamu. As we recite a Shamnu, invite you to bring a hand to your heart, but instead of beating ourselves up, we have taken enough of a beating this year. See if this can just be a gentle knocking, just to awaken our hearts to this fact of being truly, truly alive. A Shamnu is on page 462. This was sung by Or Hadash members who were part of our song circle, their voices woven together to be able to sing as one for this moment.
Ay, 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 da, 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 ya, da, 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 da. Hashamnu, Hashamnu, Bagadnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu Dovi, Dibarnu Dovi, Hevinu, Vehir Shanu, Zadnu, Hamasnu, Tafanu Shakir,
Of course, we have all heard and also given what is called the non-apology apology. And so you might see if anything here sounds familiar.
Ay, 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 da, 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 ya, da, 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 da. It's not my fault. It wasn't me. It wasn't so bad. He deserved it. Ay, 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 da, 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 ay, 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 da, 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 ay, ay. Everyone does it. No one got hurt. Get over it already. You're way too sensitive. Ay, 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 ay. It's just the way I am. Nobody's perfect. I had to. I needed to. I couldn't help myself. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Think of everything good I do. I had the best of intentions. It's really not as bad as what a lot of other people get away with every day. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. We'll turn to page 465. You know the mysteries of the universe as well as the secrets of every mortal. You search the deepest recesses of the human soul and probe all our thoughts and motives. Nothing escapes you, nothing is concealed from you. Therefore, may it be your will, Lord our God and God of our ancestors, to forgive all our sins, to pardon all our iniquities, and to grant us atonement for all of our transgressions. Page 466. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בביטוי שפתיים.
We have sinned against you by hardening our hearts, and we have sinned against you by speaking perversely.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגלוי וסתר, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בדיבור פה.
We have sinned against you publicly and privately. We have sinned against you by corrupt speech.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בהרהור הלב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בווידוי פה.
We have sinned against you by evil thoughts, and we have sinned against you by insincere confession.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בזדון ובשגגה, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בחילול השם.
We have sinned against you intentionally and unintentionally. We have sinned against you by desecrating your name.
ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחלנו, כפר לנו. ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחלנו, סלח לנו, מחלנו, כפר לנו. We turn to page 472 and rise for Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, en lanu melech ela ata. Avinu Malkeinu, aseh imanu. Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, help us to return to you fully repentant. Avinu Malkeinu, kodvenu b'sefer chaim tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, kodvenu b'sefer geula v'yeshua. Avinu Malkeinu, kodvenu b'sefer parnasa v'chalkala. Avinu Malkeinu, kodvenu b'sefer zechuyot. Avinu Malkeinu, kodvenu b'sefer slicha u'mechila. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu ma'asim. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed, ve'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu ma'asim. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed, ve'hoshienu.
In September 2015, Mother Emanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina, was grieving. 3 months earlier, 9 of their own had been shot and killed during that morning's Bible study by an avowed white supremacist, including their pastor, Clementa Pinckney. In the aftermath of the attack, many supporters made the pilgrimage to Mother Emanuel to see how the church was faring. There, they met the new leader, Pastor Norvell Goff Sr., a weary-looking man in his mid-60s who had taken the pulpit with the task of bringing some kind of healing to this congregation whose hearts had been ripped wide open. Every Sunday since the massacre, Pastor Goff had preached to his parishioners that they must show the world the resiliency of faith. "Sometimes I'm a little weary and worn," he began in his sermon. Since June 17th, 2015, many from around the country and in Charleston asked the question, "How are you? How is Mother Emanuel?" But somehow, in the midst of tremendous grief and profound brokenness, he spoke to the congregation that morning about joy. Life-affirming, radiant joy. These next 24 hours here, in many ways, can be understood as a dress rehearsal for our own deaths. We fast from food and water and sex. We wear a white kittel, the same garment that we are buried in. We offer vidui, confession, as we would on our deathbeds. But underneath it all is a powerful, pulsing joy. And so on Yom Kippur, this holiest day of the year,
our task is to begin to learn how to reclaim our joy and our connection to life, even and especially in the midst of profound loss. If you were to ask anyone, what's the most joyful holiday in Judaism? You would probably hear a lot of people say Purim. Many would say Sukkot or Simchat Torah. Maybe a few would say Shabbat. Very few, if any, would say Yom Kippur. But in a surprising Mishnah in Ta'anit, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel taught, there were no days of joy in Israel greater than the 15th of Av and Yom Kippur. The 15th of Av, Tu B'Av, was a day for finding love and matchmaking, so this makes sense. But Yom Kippur? And the Talmud answers, it is because Yom Kippur holds space for forgiveness and pardon, to be washed clean. And the Zohar, the work of mysticism, takes it even further and says, Yom HaKippurim hu Yom Kippurim. This Yom HaKippurim, this Day of Atonement, is a day ki Purim, like Purim. Two holidays that on their surface could not appear more opposite from one another, one seemingly all about deprivation, affliction, and guilt, and the other about excess and silliness and celebration. But in fact, they come from the same root, which is cultivating a deeper awareness of the vulnerability of life and a knowledge that our lives can change course at any moment, and a renewed sense of gratitude and even joy that comes from touching that core truth. My friend and my teacher, Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg, spoke about joy on Yom Kippur years ago and said, none of this seems obvious, does it? But then again, joy itself isn't obvious. Here's what she said. When we're feeling most things, most times, there is an element of distraction to it. We're sad about now and afraid about the future. We're angry about something that just happened because it taps into a whole host of things that happened a long time ago. We are so often bound up into a whole complex network of thoughts and ideas from the past and the future. And we manage, sometimes, to be both in the moment and somewhere else in another point along the spectrum of time, torn ever so slightly in two or even more pieces. But when we're feeling joy, on the other hand, there's only the moment of joy, and we take it in fully. We tend to experience more, and we are newly attuned to the small, everyday flashes of beauty and grace that populate our lives. We suddenly notice the loveliness of the flowers on the side of the road, the crisp sweetness of an apple, the kindness paid to us by someone we encounter briefly. In joy, we feel more sensitized, more awake, more alive. And it's that sensitivity, that openness, that situating oneself entirely in the present moment that opens us also to the transcendent, to the holy, to the sacred stream of life that flows through us, connects us, surrounds us. In his sermon that morning at Mother Emanuel, Pastor Goff spoke about joy in this same way. This joy was an intense awareness of the gift of life, the fruit of hope. Joy as the very condition of being alive. Joy is an everyday spiritual condition that actually has nothing to do with what we call happiness. Happiness is surface level, and there was no happiness for his congregation at that moment. But, he said, even in the midst of trials and tribulations, we still have joy. So much of the time, though, maybe even most of the time right now, we may feel cut off from any kind of joy. That expansive feeling of interconnectedness and attunement to the world around us becomes utterly inaccessible. And instead, the texture of our lives on a day-to-day basis becomes a lot more dry and brittle. Joy? Really? Right now, I'm just existing. Or maybe we get those brief flashes of joy and then we feel guilty about it. That by experiencing joy and leaning into it, we're somehow negating suffering, either our own or the suffering of so many people around us. Or that joy is somehow distracting us from the real work that needs to be done, whatever that real work is. Often, we can be the ones who are smothering our own joy, even if we don't realize it. Sometimes because we think it's what we have to do to make space for our own pain or the pain of others. But by blocking out joy, we may actually be limiting the expression of that pain as well. It's a quirk of how we're wired as human beings. When we close off from one emotion, we close off from all of them, whether we like it or not. So on Yom Kippur, our core spiritual practices, fasting and confession, are designed to help us open up to all of our lives. Rabbi Danya says, these rituals of purification are meant to lift us higher and higher into joy. Fasting is a means for altering consciousness and helping us to access a state that's difficult when we're full and grounded. Abstaining from leather lowers our defenses as we take down protective armor. And most importantly, naming all the ways our lives have been dysfunctional, all the ways we've strayed from who we should be, opens a door wide for new possibilities. And we also experience a greater awareness of our own aliveness in those final moments of Yom Kippur. The last words we will say at the end of Ne'ilah tomorrow evening are the same words that Jewish tradition would have us recite at the end of life. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Adonai Hu HaElohim. 7 times, our voices rising louder and louder each time. It is as if, worn down physically and emotionally through fasting and confession, we are now teetering on the edge of life and death. And when the shofar finally sounds at the end, we are pulled back from the brink at the last moment. Those first moments after the shofar sounds are so crisp and so full of gratitude. They are my favorite moments of the entire year because they are so full of possibility. Joy is not a luxury for those who can afford to be sheltered from the storm. It is not something we get to practice once every other problem is finally solved. Joy is a birthright for all of us. It is one of the secrets to Jewish survival, for practicing courage and resilience in dark times. Tragedy, even though it dominates the news, even though it is very, very real, is never the full story of our time. As Krista Tippett says, the headlines are not the last word on what we're capable of. They are not the whole story of us. It is our job to tell the full story of joy along with sorrow. Rav Avraham Yitzchak Kook also knew this when he wrote, "Just as there is a great value to the confession of sins, there is also great value to the confession of mitzvot, our positive deeds, which gladdens the heart and strengthens the holy paths of life." If we were to only focus on what's gone wrong this year, we could fill page after page after page, but it still wouldn't be the entire story. Rav Kook's teaching inspired the creation of what is known as Havidui Hamashlim, the complementary confession. Ahavnu, Bachinu, Gamalnu. We have loved, we have cried, we have given back. This isn't to negate the bad or to cancel it out until we get to a net zero. This is to point us back toward shlemut, toward wholeness. This is to celebrate what is working well right here, right now. So now I want to invite you to close your eyes. Take 3 deep breaths. See if you can remember a moment from this past year when you experienced joy. A moment of feeling fully awake, fully alive. Where were you? Who was with you, if anyone? What did it feel like in your body? Memorize that feeling. It will always be there to return to, no matter how long you've forgotten. Joy, as Pastor Goff said, is the very condition of being alive, an intense awareness that each moment is a gift and contains the fruit of hope. May we all taste that sweetness in this coming year, every single day. Gamar Chatima Tova. May you all be sealed for a year of goodness, of life, and of joy.
We continue with Kaddish Shalem on page 476. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabba amen v'hama divrach yirtei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechonu v'yomecho v'chayetecho beit Yisrael bagala u'bizman kari ve'immeru amen yeheshmei rabba milvorach Ve'alam ulamei amaya Yitbarach ve'yishtabach ve'yitbahar ve'yitromam ve'yitnaseh ve'yitadar Yitale ve'yitala Shem medik Le'heila le'ela mikol bechata v'shirata tishbechata v'nechemata Damiran ve'yama ve'im 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 ve'immeru amen Tikabal slot hon vat hon decho beit Yisrael hodam avohon divishmaya ve'imeru amen yesh lama rabba min shemaya ve'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen Oseh shalom b'momav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei teva ve'imeru amen. We rise for Aleinu, page 478. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol latekedu la liotzer beishit shelo asanu kegoye haratot velo samanu kimishpechot adama shelo sam chelkenu kahem vigor aleinu kechol hamonam vanachnu korim ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. לתקן עולם במלכות שדי ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
can take a seat. Mourner's Kaddish is found on page 482. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah. Ve'alma tivrach yerutei v'yamlich machutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'zman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'elam u'lamei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudusha brichu. Le'ila le'ila mikol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Da'miran bi'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen. Gamar Chatima Tova. Tonight, this experience doesn't stop when you shut your computer or turn off your television or walk away from your machzor. So I invite you to pay attention to the in-between moments, what it's like as you're getting ready for bed, as you're brushing your teeth, as you're laying down, and then as you wake up in the morning, just noticing, who am I when nobody's watching? We will begin back here tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. and we hope you'll join us. Laila Tov, Gamar Tov.